All your favorite wrestling shows rolled into one. Welcome to the We Book It podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the We Book It podcast. This is your Who's Next with NXT review, also your AEW All Elite recap episodes put together. Shout out to Coach. He's going to handle Friday night for us this week. And yeah, man, we're excited that you guys are with us to take in another episode of the We Book It podcast, getting you guys ready. Some of you are already at work. Others, you are headed to work. Make sure that you guys have a great day that way. I have about fairly 20 minutes to get through 2 episodes of wrestling before I got to clock in to work myself. So let's get to it. All right. So first and foremost, starting with NXT, airing live from the WWE Performance Center, we have NXT from Orlando, Florida, the August 11th edition. We have Grayson Waller fought Cruz Montana in his official NXT debut to determine the number 1 contender for Tony D's world title. Saquon Sugars faced Dion Lennox one-on-one. You have Zarya defending the Women's North American Championship against Ren Sinclair. Izzy Dame and Nico Vance look to settle their issues with Shawn Spears and Lizzie Rain, though things didn't work out as expected. So, first match of the evening, we got Izzy Dame and Nico Vance versus Lizzie Rain and E.K. Prosper. So, Lizzie could not find Spears as the match began, leaving her to fight alone. After overwhelming Izzy early with her aggressive strikes, Nico tagged in. Prosper arrived to join Lizzie and help her fight this mixed tag match. The two hit simultaneous machine gun chops and tornado DDTs to gain some confidence until Izzy sent Lizzie into the steps. Into the picture-in-picture break we go. Lizzie continued to cause problems for Izzy while Nico had the power edge on Prosper. Izzy nearly took the win after Lizzie tried Thunderstruck on Nico, only to get tossed into an Izzy powerbomb. Lizzie finally got her Thunderstruck in on Nico to set up a moonsault by Prosper for the win. While NXT has heavily featured Lizzie so far, it may be going under the radar for those most not watching NXT of just how good she is, because she really is really good. This was a great showcase of the talent as she out-wrestled everyone else in the match and set a different tone whenever she was in the action. While her talent is undeniable, it was odd for her to win over the established team of Izzy and Nico with a last-minute partner. This was a chance to further solidify the culling as a threat. Instead, it made them look like jokes in a rivalry that should see them leading at the stage. If the goal is to make something of Izzy and Nico, who still look too green for their years in NXT, they need to at least look dangerous. No Spears appearing at all was also a surprise, though it does further play into the chairman saying that no one should trust him. All right, so yeah, Prosper and Lizzie defeat Nico and Izzy by pinfall. This show also started with a recap of last week. WWE also teased intergender wrestling multiple times in this match, but played it safe, limiting those exchanges to a crucifix bomb and Thunderstruck late in the bout. Backstage, after another break, Prosper explained that he stepped up to the opportunity. Kylie Armstrong then stole the microphone and marched to the ring. So, Kylie Armstrong headed to the ring to call out Kendall Gray, but Kaylani Jordan interrupted to call her shot instead. Kendall Gray and Ren Sinclair arrived with the contract. Gray handed the contract to Lonnie, who agreed to fight the NXT Women's Champion at Heatwave. That's going to be a really good match. Callie was not happy with that agreement, started a brawl where Callie and Lonnie stood tall over Gray and Sinclair. It is a wonder that Lonnie's whole time at NXT, this will be her first NXT Women's Championship opportunity. She and Gray have proved their chemistry multiple times over, so that will likely be the match of the night at Heatwave. While the booking is strong, this segment did fall into overly familiar territory with the NXT women's division, and Jordan often suffers in those spots on the mic. So perhaps the team could have more of an answer finally getting Jordan to the main roster, since most of her peers have passed her by at this point. So NXT show medical checking on Gray, further taping up her ear. In the men's locker room, Miles Bourne and Tavion Heights agreed to be fighting champions, ready to showcase the tag team division. Backstage, Keanu Carver questioned Robert Stone's choice to give the next opportunity to either Grayson Waller or Cruz Montana. He calmed himself and promised big things to come. The next match after this was Saquon Sugars versus Dion Lennox. Sugars came into his match swinging, but James and Griffin quickly got involved, distracting Sugars. While Sugars tried to use his bat against Dark State, Lennox ripped it away from him. As the referee was distracted with Lennox, James and Griffin tossed him onto the announce table. Back in the ring, Lennox finished off Sugars with the suplex power slam for the victory. So this match honestly was oddly rushed. I don't understand why it was. And it did not accomplish much despite Lennox getting his win back against Sugars. If anything, it further showed that NXT does not have enough faith in Lennox as the Dark State leader to be the real big match performer. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to end up doing with Dark State. I'm very curious. I think them moving up to the main roster and joining someone who's already established in WWE might help them. But like I said, I'm very curious of what they're going to do. We'll see. Also, in Robert Stone's office, Stone talked with Rey Mysterio over the phone. They agreed to a AAA Cruiserweight Championship match in 2 weeks, with a number one contender match next week, including EK Prosper and La Parka. So that's something to watch out for too. The Women's North American Championship match was next. It was Ren Sinclair versus Zarya. So Ren walked in a bit banged up and was quickly overwhelmed by the power of Zarya, who almost took the early win with a pump kick. Sinclair fought back and took down Zarya on the floor with a baseball slide into the picture-in-picture break. Every time the women's speed champion tried to rally, though, the power of Zarya was too much for Sinclair to handle. After a spear, Dion Lennox and Saquon Sugars brawled out through the ring before Zarya finished the job with an F5. They are building up Zarya to be probably the biggest heel in NXT. I mean, like, she's just overpowering everybody. Somebody's going to get a lucky fluke win over her a couple times, but I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, at least by January, Zarya isn't the NXT Women's Champion. I mean, they're just building her up that way. Monster. I mean, anytime you're pulling off Brock Lesnar's F5 and you're doing it on women and you're just beasting through everybody. I mean, I think that she's next up. So next up, we got Mason Rook versus Cam Hendricks. So Rook tossed Hendricks out of the ring early, but the explosive offense of Hendricks allowed him to quickly respond, especially with an impressive rolling clothesline. Rook's own explosive offense, though, helped him fire back, tossing around Hendricks with ease. However, Hendricks exposed the turnbuckle and sent Rook into it on a corner Death Valley driver attempt, followed by a Showtime kick to win. So Hendricks defeated Rook by pinfall in this match. I don't like Rook losing a lot. I thought that they were going to allow Rook to really breeze through, but apparently they're making him really earn his stripes. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with this. Next up, we had Lexis King with Birthright versus Lucian Price. The first shot of the match was a loud chop from Price to King that cut open the chest of the men's speed champion. A distraction from Connors helped King deliver a strong knee and take over, targeting the left arm of the bigger man. A drive-by set up King to attempt a coronation, but Price fought it off and hit a single-arm powerbomb for a definitive win. Price was the star of this match throughout, dominating King throughout in a contest that ended fast enough to be a speed championship loss. And I think that's why they set this up. I think these two are going to fight for the speed title. Price beat King, but I think King will eventually end up getting the win over him once the speed championship is on the line. In the women's locker room, Thea Hale and Jada Parker talked about Thea's plan to face Natty next week. We'll see what happens with that. And then last but not least, we had the number one contenders match for the NXT Championship, Grayson Waller versus Cruz Montana. So Montana pushed Waller early with hard-hitting offense while playing to a welcoming crowd. Waller tried to take a break on the outside, but Montana dived onto Waller, knocking them both into an announce table just before the final picture-in-picture break. Right back from the break, Montana caught Waller with the suplex, and the former two-time TNA World Champion hit outlined in chalk, followed by a Death Valley driver for a near fall. Waller ducked outside to avoid the spin the block and returned to the ring with a running flatliner for a near fall. Waller got another near fall after a vicious stomp on the back of the head of Montana. Waller went for the rolling stunner, but Montana reversed it into the spin the block. Before Montana could get the pin, though, Zilla Fatu laid out Santana with a Samoan drop, followed by a Samoan splash to Waller. An anticlimactic end to a great match, spoiled with the work that Montana and Waller have done in the last few weeks to sell this contest. After months of reshuffling the top seed in NXT, the NXT Championship picture looked clear. Mason Rook and Naraku had stepped down. Montana and Waller had stepped up. However, apparently Robert Stone once again delivered a blockbuster signing that immediately ruined this main event. While Fatu has the name, the bloodline connection, his credibility within NXT audience is still not established. There was no reason to immediately shoot him up to the main event scene. However, he is a huge acquisition for NXT. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, man. All in all, I'm gonna rate this NXT anticlimactic. It was a C. You had some really great matches going on there, but just not enough for me. All right, let's move over to AEW, guys. So we have a bunch going on for AEW. First and foremost, as soon as the show went live in the arena, Will Ospreay came out to talk about his match against Kenny Omega at All In. Talked about performing in Arena Mexico last week and how great an experience it was. And he shared a story about the first time he worked there and how he found out that same day that his grandfather passed away. He said he is going to leave everything in the ring for the fans because that's what his grandpa would have wanted. He also called out Omega to join him in the ring with some insults, but he was greeted by the music of the Don Callis family instead. Don was talking trash. RPG Vice attacked him from behind with Mark Davis and Jake Doyle. All four men stomped him into the mat until Omega showed up to make the save with a metal pipe. One of the smartest things AEW did in this feud was having Omega take Ospreay out when he had the chance. So saving him from an attack feels like a step backwards, even if Omega still showed some animosity towards him after. Good segment, good way to start off the show. I liked it. MJF versus Nick Wayne versus Speedball Mike Bailey. Listen, this match, you already know who won this match. MJF came out with his Triple B, the big, beautiful belt. He said he called himself the OTC, no, not the original tribal chief, the one true champion. A good play on words right there for him. This was a fun contest between these three. There is no feud going on between these three. This really was a match just to make MJF look strong. But again, he did end up picking up the victory. It does look like him and Andrade are going back and forth. Then we got Jay White versus David Finlay. So the Continental Challenger Cup continued this week with Jay White taking on one of his biggest rivals in David Finlay. The rules of the tournament prohibited anyone from joining them at ringside, so it was designed to be a fair contest. Switchblade countered an attack right after the bell to take control. Dueling chants broke out in the crowd as they traded strikes between each other. These two have made their story feel personal, so it was no surprise when the match was more of a fight than a grappling clinic. They sold them intensity well, but it felt like an odd time for their first big singles encounter in AEW. Of course, Jay White ended up defeating David Finlay. This match, of course, you knew was going to be good. It was going to be a good one. And Mick Foley did an interview with Bang Bang Gang, and it could have been far more entertaining if he had leaned into his catchphrase more. But, it is what it is. Next up, Adam Page, Brandito, and Brody King came out to celebrate winning the trios titles last week at Grand Slam Mexico. It didn't take long for Swerve Strickland's music to hit, though. As soon as he appeared, Hangman was staring daggers at him. Swerve recounted his history with all three men over the last few years and talked about how he has beaten all of them. Hangman said he has watched Swerve do some terrible things and he has nothing to show for it. This is when Ricochet and The Demand and Lethal Swerve came out to stake their claim at a rematch. Ricochet brought up how Swerve doesn't have a trio to watch his back and told him to leave. Surprisingly, he didn't. He did, but not without insulting Ricochet first. The segment ended without a fight, but it did a good job of making the trios titles feel important again. The belts have often felt less consequential than AEW's other championships, so it was encouraging to see so many teams express interest in them. Not to mention, this could very well be the opening where you see the New Day come in and be Swerve Strickland's partners for those trios world championships at All In. Swerve Strickland, I think this is how they're going to bring a New Day into. I'm sorry, Kofi and Austin Creed into AEW. So we'll see. Next up, we had Kevin Knight versus Chris Jericho with the TNT Championship on the line. Good to see Chris Jericho still fighting for championships. The TNT Championship was up for grabs when Kevin Knight put the title on the line against Chris Jericho in the next match. Don Callis accompanied his client, but he didn't join the commentary team like he usually would. This match was very fast-paced. It felt like the title was going to change hands, but having the Jet successfully retain over someone with the legacy of Jericho is always going to be valuable. That's right. Kevin Knight does defeat Chris Jericho to maintain his championship. Paul White was on commentary for this match, and he called Chris Jericho his favorite tag team partner. Obviously, everybody remembers their time as Jericho in WWE. Next up, we had Chris Statlander versus Viva Van. Chris Statlander was in action this week against Viva Van, who did not have a televised entrance, so we knew this one was going to be quick, and Statlander ran right through her. She beat her real quick, and then Foley came out to interview Statlander and inform her that she will be in a fatal four-way for the TBS title next week with Persephone, Hikaru Shida, and Maya World. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we got Thunder Rosa and Maya World versus Persephone and Hikaru Shida. Persephone and Shida came out looking like they might attack Stat and Maya World, and Thunder Rosa showed up for their tag team match before anything could happen. Shida and Rosa had a nice sequence at the start. Both women have been in AEW for years and know each other very well, and you could see that chemistry on display. They were given a little more time than Stat and Van, but some of it was taken up by a break, so it felt like the women were becoming shortchanged a bit here. However, Maya and Rosa defeated Persephone and Shida, which is going to obviously play into their fatal four-way match next week. I think AEW was kind of running short on time because these last matches got very, very, very short. Last but not least, your main event of the evening, Jack Perry versus Jon Moxley. So the Continental Challenge Cup continued in the main event where Jack Perry took on current Continental Champion Jon Moxley. The rules state that whoever wins the tournament wins the title. So for Mox to remain champion, he has to be successful in every single match, which puts more pressure on him than anyone else in the tournament. They started with some simple grappling. Mox even made a clean break when Perry backed him into the ropes. Jungle Jack seemed to have the upper hand until Moxley knocked him out of the air during a suicide dive with a single punch. After that, they went to break. By the time we returned for commercial break, Perry was busted open and still firmly in control. Moxley ended up defeating Perry to obviously retain his title and continue on in the contest. And this was your card for AEW. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe so that you never miss any of our content here on the We Book It Network. Make sure you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time,